So I'm going to call to order the City of Burlington's Board of Finance meeting on Wednesday, May 14th, 2025 at 5:33 p.m. Before we go to the agenda, I want to just note these are our standard budget information meetings that we hold. They are following a Board of Finance agenda format. The document that was posted does start with City Council, but this is a Board of Finance meeting. On our third cycle of this, we will now have the title actually the Board of Finance, but I just want to clarify that because of that, just the counselors in the room, Board of Finance are the folks who are considered the quorum for convening this particular meeting. This is meant for informational purposes, so we are going to allow all counselors to ask questions, but this is not a place for a debate and deliberation by the full council. So I just want to clarify the process. And next time we will have the final edit of making sure this reads as a Board of Finance agenda. It says City Council on the agenda itself as posted, even though it's listed as a budget meeting. I just want to make sure we're really clear about process, who's the quorum, who's the body convening right now. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay, just moving on. All right. Our first item for the Board of Finance is the agenda. Is there a motion on the agenda?
Move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you, Councilor Bravo. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Travers. Any discussion on the motion before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor from the Board of Finance members indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is public forum. It is our practice for Board of Finance, which we will be following tonight, to take first public comment from members of the public in the room in person, and then we will go online. If there's if there are folks online who should just raise their hands in queue. So first we will go, and if there's multiple people here to address Board of Finance, we'll stick to council rules, which is about 2 minutes or so, just to honor the fact there's a long agenda tonight. And so is there anyone in the audience who'd like to address Board of Finance? Would you like to, well, the chief is sitting in
I'm sitting in
Make a little room.
Thank you, it's a little room.
In mind introducing yourself and then go ahead.
Yes, okay, my name is Maggie Lugers. I am currently involved with the Vermont Senior Games. I was the former Director of Recreation Parks for the City of South Burlington. I also am formerly the Recreation Superintendent for 29 years for the City of Burlington. I'm here tonight to really talk about some of the process that happened with some of the colleagues that I worked very closely with here in Burlington. And I understand the seriousness of the constraints with the city budget. However, I do not understand how the city is eliminating essential workers in the department that have the institutional knowledge, professional certifications, and it takes professional certifications in Parks and Recreation, just like you would for being a teacher or any other profession, as I'm sitting next to some of our fire department guys. And the other thing is the mentorship. Mentorship is crucially important for new professionals that are coming up through the ranks to be able to see how things are done and how to do them in a professional manner. And it also brings cohesiveness to an outstanding department. And certainly the department has been outstanding. And I'm just going to do a little education here, just on they're called the 3 pillars with Parks and Recreation nationally. And the first one, this is what they live by. And for the community, health and well-being, creating healthy connections for a thriving community, equity, which can be a lot of different things, fostering social connections and belonging. And the last is environmental resilience, stewarding and expanding healthy parks and natural spaces for current and future generations. As I look around the room here, I see all these young kids. That just doesn't happen by osmosis. It happens by hard work of people that are dedicated to have really good programming and having it in a safe environment. What is astonishing to me is in a time of crisis, you need recreational opportunities more than ever. And the city is in crisis, and to eliminate or reduce, there should be more. Burlington Parks and Recreation has been a shining star. and a leader as far as the city, the state of Vermont, all departments look to Parks, Recreation, and Waterfront to see what the new things will be going on. Also, nationally, they look at Burlington Parks and Recreation too. The department, especially with recreation, has won local and national awards consistently in programming and events over decades. How this happens is because of outstanding leadership and teamwork. It takes team, it takes everyone to pull it together. I'm astonished at how colleagues I've worked with, and I'm gonna name them. Gary Rogers, Melissa Kate, and Joanne Putzier, for over 20 years, were eliminated with no warning, ordered to pack up their personal belongings and escorted out of the building as if they were criminals. These are the same employees that have organized for years activities for your children. Sports, day camps, I'm just naming a few because I have 2 minutes, skating lessons, adult programs, all different ages, basketball, day trips, lots of things. And citywide events, Kids Day, and in particular, July 3rd. That are fun, safe, and a celebration for the whole community beyond Burlington. I'm talking about beyond Chittenden County. There's more than 100,000 people that come to downtown to enjoy fireworks. They go and shop. Hopefully they shop and they eat. It happens because of collaboration with city departments, like the gentleman I'm sitting next to, businesses and sponsorships.
For about that 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Can I just finish? I got one more, thank you.
Yeah.
It's crucial to acknowledge hard work and dedicated employees often. If you give respect, you get it back 150%. The way this was handled was unnecessary, demeaning, and will affect these people for their whole entire lives. City leadership needs to do better. Be a shining star. And I have pocket prices that you guys may want to take. Because it's who I am and how I do things. To hopefully make your day better. And don't let this happen like this again. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. You're welcome. Are there other members of the public here to address Board of Finance? In the room? Okay, we'll go online. We have former City Councilor Sharon Busher online. Good evening, Sharon.
Hi, good evening. I'm going to, I know you have a very full agenda, so I'm going to focus on, first of all the departments' presentations are very good. And the reason I'm here is to listen to the questions that counselors and others may have, or the added language that I couldn't get if I wasn't here. I have a neighborhood planning assembly that I'm foregoing because I care a lot about this budget and this process. So the first, and I'm not going to speak to all of the presentations, but just for clarity, with planning's presentation, they reference the 2 data team positions that were lost to the Department of Financial Administration, whatever that's called. And my question is, that's a loss of 2 people, and the reporting mechanism is now different, but is there access to the functions that those people performed now also no longer available to them? That's not clear to me, and I'm going to end with a comment regarding that at the end. But I feel like really what this is a shift in reporting and a placement under a different head, but maybe not a loss of access. And I need clarity on that. the library, I just want to acknowledge the library. When I left the council, most of what we were focused on for the library was they were dealing with the population of unhoused people, and they were trying to balance how to deal with trespassing and what to do. And that has evolved into a department that has embraced that population. Certainly you need enforcement, but they've embraced the needs of that population, and they're balancing the safety and the enjoyment of the library for all versus access to a place where some can come to warm up for a few minutes, read a paper. And I just want to acknowledge that evolution. It's been a wonderful evolution. And the fact that they stepped up to serve, to be open on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I see that, I think that's continuing, to provide meals to people. I want to acknowledge how important that is, that hub for our community. And so it's not so much about their budget, but hoping that those pieces of the budget will remain, those functions will remain, and how important that evolution has been. I also, let me see, sorry, I'm trying to rush through this. As far as the Department of Finance and Administration, once again, a department that has evolved over time and now definitely has evolved into a much larger division. I couldn't figure out from the information the number of existing employees when you started FY25 and now the number of employees you have in FY26. And those that have merged from other areas, are their functions the same, or have they added responsibilities in addition to performing the same functions? And hopefully, if that's the case, I really do get concerned about balancing what is reasonable workload, because what looks good on paper may not really be doable. And you set people up for failure, you set the city up for frustration. And I don't want that to happen. So I just wanted to mention that. And I'm looking for those answers tonight, or at some point. I was concerned about the number of employees that were lost in Parks and Rec. And so I'm not going to dwell on that, but Mayor and your administration, I think the city needs the people that want to understand how our government works. We need a tutorial on functions lost, and if they're provided in a different way and in a different location, where is that? Can we have a roadmap to that? And if the function ends, then it's a dead end and the service is no longer provided. But I think it's really important to understand this, because I think there are some services that people are really fearful have ended, and some you've been clear in your communication, but others, they leave me asking the question. And so I really think that that's really important, to understand where the service is now provided, if it's still being made available, where it's provided, how the communication between the previous department and what they know and what the new department might need to know, how that communication is going to work. I'm very serious about this tutorial.
5 minutes, so if you can just finish your thought.
That was it.
Perfectly timed then. Thank you. And thank you very much, Sharon.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else online who would like to address public forum? I see Romeo. Well, we should be promoting you and you should be unmuted. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me here?
Yes, yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak. I just wanted to be quick. I'm not going to take the whole 2 or 5 minutes, but I just wanted to share a word of I wouldn't say optimism, but rather a word of encouragement to everybody. I know we're going through a difficult time in our city, not only from the safety aspect, but also everything that is happening. And what I ask from everybody in this difficult time is to just take back a moment and take a deep breath and just kind of walk through the situation one step at a time, and kind of look through in what is the most important to our city in terms of unity, in terms of coming together, in terms of promoting equity in our city. Yeah, so I just wanted to share that part of how important it is for everybody during this really, really trying times for everybody, and not just for the city staff members or the administration or the council, just everybody living in our city. We are going through trying times, and I hope everybody can find in their hearts a way to step back and take a deep breath and just walk through slowly, one day at a time, and just find together, as it were, holistically speaking, solutions to the problems that we face. I know the solutions are in front of us, and we'll be able to get there. But let's take a deep breath, and hopefully everything will be fine. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Romeo. Is anyone else online who would like to address Board of Finance and Public Forum? Seeing none, I will close public forum and we will move on to our first agenda item. Again, these are informational budget presentations. And if you're looking at the 6 or 7 or so departments we have on here, that's a long agenda. So I'm going to ask that our departments plan on about, I don't know, 8 to 10 minutes max for presentation. Good challenge for all of you. And hopefully the fire department will lead as we go to number 1. And then we will leave about 10 minutes or so for counselors. So I ask you to be concise in your questions. If you can stack them and send any that we maybe pick your most important one, and then we can send it to department heads. So if you do the math, we will be here for at least about 2 more hours if we stick 20 minutes every single time. And I will do my best to keep us on time, but I just ask for everyone's participation here. All right. Consenting yes? Okay, here we go. First presentation. Chief LaChance and DC Curtin are here from our Burlington Fire Department, and I will pass it over to you.
All right, good evening, everybody. We're starting off with a sizable budget, and we appreciate your time and support. So the first slide just shows our departmental organizational chart. This does look similar to last year's organizational chart. There's 95 staff and 1 office manager. So we have operational staff, 95 and 1 office manager. We were not affected by the RIF last week, and that fact is not lost on us. We really we always appreciate the support that the city gives us, and we understand we do a little bit of a different job, but we all have friends that were affected, and it's not lost on us. So we appreciate, but we do appreciate the support here at the fire department. I do have detailed organizational charts by position, so that the administration deputy, the operations deputy, if anybody wants to see those, they're welcome to let me know, and I will be happy to send them to you. Highlights for FY25. I'm going to start with the second slide first. The second slide first is just a baseline response data. We did just shy of 11,000 calls for service last year, 1,592 fire responses, which was 67 structural fires, 7,100 emergency medical responses, and 2,200 other responses. Every call for service that was received was responded to by units. And all of that data was collected in our records management system. It was about a 1% increase last year. We've been seeing double-digit increases over the last few fiscal years, 11%, 22 to 23, 10%, 23 to 24, and we saw 1% into 25. So, you know, we're doing what we need to do a little proactively, which is this slide here. We're trying to get out there a bit proactively with our community health program, with our community response team. This is something we stood up, you all remember it. And we're trying to get out a little bit proactively and trying to help folks before they need help. And so we have a team go out. We use overtime firefighters like we have since day 1. We've been collaborating with the BPDK team, with Howard Mental Health, just basically working to help create pathways of vulnerable community members. We've also been running this as a response unit for overdose calls, so it's reduced the level of response. You don't see the big fire trucks and ambulances on every one of these calls for overdose. Not every one of them is a call for overdose. So we're able to meter that response and it saves some resources both in vehicles, the use, and time of staff. We've also helped connect individuals to some treatment and recovery services. We started the Prevent Initiative, which is offering buprenorphine in the street. As much as we want to, we're just having a struggle with getting folks to accept it. So we're still offering buprenorphine in the street. What do we do for cost savings? As we look toward FY26, cost savings in the fire department budget is hard. We are 93% of our budget is staffing costs. The staffing is the staffing. We do have minimum staffing requirements for the fire department due to NFPA requirements for what needs to be on certain call types. Our minimum staffing is 22. We never have fewer than 22 people on at all times. With that, it's important that we keep our staffing healthy, so as close to that 95 as we can. Having vacancies is not good for us because with the minimum staffing requirements, we hire overtime to meet that staffing level and also require mandatory overtime to meet that level. That being said, we worked really hard since the COVID years to try to keep staffing levels healthy. And as you can see, our overtime has declined 18%. And this is the July 1 to April 15 timeline. So I looked at equal years, so I could include this year, but 18% decrease last year and a 12% decrease so far this year. So keeping those healthy staffing levels has been key to that. Another thing we did was we started a lateral hiring program so that we can reduce the onboarding time of folks. We actually have 3 employees that are going through the very first lateral program right now. They're about halfway through. It's a 6-week program instead of a 22-week program, so it gets them on the floor counting toward that minimum staffing level that much faster. Where does the money come from? Well, we do have revenue. We do charge for ambulance services, and we have over the last few years. We did increase ambulance revenue last year. We increased our billing amounts. Medicare and Medicaid also increased their allowed amounts a little bit, but not a ton. And we can charge whatever we want. I mean, relatively for an ambulance ride, but 80% of the folks that we bring are covered by Medicare and Medicaid, and we are kind of stuck to those limits. So as we do go up with our ambulance revenue, we do get to a point where until they start raising some of those limits, we're kind of stuck. And reducing calls for service is kind of a double-edged sword because then we don't go on them, we don't garner that revenue. So while we do want a community that is healthy, we do rely on ambulance revenue to make ends meet. Last year, we brought in 18% more than the expected revenue, which was very good. This year, we're 76% of expected revenue, 75% of the way through the year. So we are up by 1%. And usually May and June are fairly strong revenue months for the ambulance fees. Fees for service is another fee that we bring in. It's been $530,000 for the last 2 years. We've never met the 530. Fees for service are things like fire marshal fees for inspections or time of sale inspections, radio box fees, things like that. Things that the fees are set by charter, so we need to actually do charter updates to increase those fees. We are working to do that. We are behind on some of those fee structures for sure. And I'd like to see in the next year those fees get updated and then get updated so that they automatically rise based on CPI. That way we don't get behind and then have to play catch up every 5 or 10 years. Total expenses, FY25, we're expecting to meet revenue by about 96%, but we're expecting, 97%, but we're expecting to only spend about 96% of our budget. So we should be in a fairly decent place, definitely not over budget this year. FY26, you're seeing on that bottom line, new money for FY26 is 2.223 million. It seems like a lot. One of those things that really drove that was we lost 1.2 million in ARPA money that we expected, or that we had last year, and we had ARPA money in the year before, but all of those one-time funds have gone away. So we need to make those up by increasing the general fund obligation, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is for right now. But our revenue for FY26 is going to be a little lower because of that ARPA money being gone, and bringing that fee for service back to a level that is actually attainable. So what are we looking at for threats? You know, when we look at this year, the tariffs, I was just talking with DC Current today about the price of fire hose. Tariffs are increasing the price of fire hose about $100 a lane because we get our hose in Canada. Medical supplies have seen a double-digit increase. So if you really comb through our budget, you're going to see we've added some money to those medical fees and supplies because of those increases. A bag valve mask that we use on almost every true overdose. You know, every one of those is $15. If we give you glucagon, one dose is $235. There's all kinds of different fees here that or things that cost a ton, and we don't want to withhold the service. We do have a very robust advanced life support service that we offer the city, and it's unfortunate if we can't provide a service because we can't afford supplies. So we did have support in increasing that supply budget this year. Other things that increase our budget is going to be, we're in contract negotiations right now, so we are expecting a cost of living adjustment for our staff. So that's basically the other large increase accounting for the increase in the budget. Again, our general fund obligation grew by 2.223 million based on estimated COLA increases, increased supply costs, and reduction in revenue from one-time funds. Our staffing stayed the same, 96 authorized. Currently, we hold 2 vacancies, which we hope to fill in the next recruit school. We are continuing to evolve our community health programs. We're working closely with Mayor's Special Assistant Public Safety, Ingrid Jonas, and the police department. We've had some great meetings lately, and we're working to evolve our community health programs, which is exciting. And we're also working toward cost savings, keeping that staffing level solid so that our minimum staffing overtime costs remain low or lower. How'd I do?
You did it at 10 minutes and 45 seconds.
Mark.
Alright. No pressure others. So I'd like to open up for about 10 minutes or so again to city councilors for questions for the Burlington Fire Department. Again, I encourage you to maybe prioritize your top 1 or 2 questions, and if you have additional ones from there, the chief and his staff to be happy to answer those. So questions from councilors. Councilor Chambers.
Thanks very much for this presentation. I will try to just lightning round a few questions here. Keep me on time here, Farrah.
Yep.
Not too long, I can put them in writing. So one is, you mentioned ongoing union negotiations for the purposes of sort of baking a COLA into the budget. Have we assumed the same COLA for both union and non-union staff this year? And if so, can you tell us what the percentage COLA assumption is from fiscal year to fiscal year?
So that would be a subject to bargaining, and so not something we can do in a public meeting.
Well, I'm assuming you've assumed some adjustment for your employees, or are you assuming it's level set?
We have assumed something, and we never talk about what that is when we have not in public, when we have not negotiated that ahead of time, and we are in active negotiation.
Yeah, we haven't TA'd any kind of cost of living adjustment yet. So
Okay.
So we
But,
don't have our city attorney here, but I would not feel comfortable answering that in open session right now.
okay, but there's a line item for salaries in here.
Yes.
And that line item includes both union and non-union employees.
Correct.
And there is some cost
Yes,
of living
there is.
adjustment assumed for both union and non-union
Yes.
employees in there. Okay. Understood. There seems to be a significant jump in retirement year to year, particularly, from a couple of years ago to today. Just wondering if you can perhaps dive into that a little bit more.
That is a question we will have to get back to you on. That is not something he can answer, but in my office, that is all calculated and I would be happy to delve into the, why that is.
When I received my budget to do my presentation, a lot of that stuff is pre-populated
Yes.
from.
Okay, alright. It's just a question, it's gone up almost
Yes.
1.5 million from 2024 to next fiscal year, and a question I had. And then I have a couple other questions, but for the other folks here, this is going to be sort of a trend in the questions that I have. Which is if you could explain a little bit more around the extent there's line items in here on travel and training, education, special training and such, as well as line items for professional and contractual services. There's a number of areas of the budget in all areas here where I think will likely be helpful for us to understand, and don't feel like you need to go into it now, but but I think it'll be helpful for me to understand what each department is planning on spending those education and special training monies on. I certainly know that you all have education special training that you need to go to. I certainly know other departments have that as well as some vital professional contractual services. But I think given the tight budget here, it will be important for us to understand specifically what you're thinking those monies may be used for.
And I'm happy to answer that completely for you. If you could send me that in an email, I would do that. I can certainly speak to the training budget. The training budget was increased last year and a little bit this year. It was increased this year by $10,000 because we received a federal grant for training, and I was uncomfortable spending that grant this year. There's a 10% match, which is about $10,000. We received $200,000. We're planning on breaking it up between 2 fiscal years. I was uncomfortable spending it because we spend it and then we're on the hook for it if the federal government doesn't want to pay us back. So what we did, we put that off. We're gonna underspend our budget this year by at least $10,000 on that travel and training, and I asked that it put in that $10,000 be put into this year's budget, so that we can spend the whole $220,000 that was allotted to us by the federal. Other training is, of course, we keep all of our firefighters to firefighter 2 level training. I can go into what that consists of. Our officers are fire officer 2 trained. We have EMT basics. A few EMT basics, but most of our staff, if not almost all of our staff, is advanced level or paramedic level. And there's annual training that needs to go along with that. If you actually break it down, we only have about, I don't know, I'm trying to think of what it was. It was $400 or $500 per employee a year to keep trained to all these certifications. Unfortunately, in the world that we live in, you pretty much call the fire department for whatever is going on, and we need to keep folks trained, whether we respond to serious hazmat calls or not, we need to be trained at that level. So just very robust training programs.
Okay. I'll follow up.
Yeah, and in the contract services, certainly I have all of those on a spreadsheet to say what comes out of every GL. I mean, there's ambulance, we have to do annual ambulance licensing, we have to do annual stretcher maintenance. We have to do maintenance to our stair chairs so that everything stays certified, so we're carrying somebody down the stairs, the stair chair doesn't break. A lot of our contractor services is based on reducing liability to the city, like keeping things maintained.
So Chief, we have 3 other counselors in the queue, and Counselor Towers, I'm gonna give
I'm done.
additional ones, great, you'll send it, and just keep that in mind, and if there's maybe 2 counselors, you can ask your top question, and if you have more, you can just sort of state the question. You don't have to give us the justification for the question, that's fine, questions are fine, and then our team can take down the questions and answer them afterward. We can share out those answers to everyone, of course. Next in queue, I had Counselor Grant, although she just disappeared. Counselor Grant, are you online and have a question?
Yeah, I just parked. I guess I'll just quickly, I want to thank the chief for his service. And I really want to thank him for being above all the politics and thanking him for the data as well. I know it's not something we can talk about because it's actively being negotiated, but I in the back of my mind wonder, when we take a look at the salaries, will it be beyond COLA because of the wide disparities that have started to occur between the salaries paid to our police officers versus our firefighters? That is something that I've been concerned about for a while. And then just going back to the training, I would be interested to know, we have like a line item for recruitment and then a line item for training. I don't know if you've ever done the average cost for recruiting someone versus training them. And I can take that offline in an email. Thank you.
Thank you, Mila.
Thank you, Counselor Grant. We're gonna move now on to Counselor Carpenter. You are on mute, Counselor Carpenter.
Sorry. I too want to thank the chief for his fabulous service to the city of Burlington. Two quick questions. You mentioned the loss of ARPA. Can you tell me how much that was? And another question for Catherine about were we spending ARPA on general operations as opposed to special projects?
ARPA was 1.2 million last year.
And that was 1.2 million for fire, and there was an additional 1.2 million for police. And we used it for salaries in both cases, because that is an allowable use for ARPA.
But it wasn't for additional services as opposed to the core services.
Correct.
Okay. And just a comment about the fire fees being embedded in charter, which seems silly and ought to be moved to ordinance, but for another day. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Carpenter.
It might be an ordinance.
It is an ordinance, based on what you told me the other
Yeah,
day.
it is an
Okay. Well, then we
I
can change it.
misspoke, I apologize.
It is, and
Okay.
it's something that the chief and I just briefly discussed as something, making sure we're aware of for this upcoming year, in partnership with the council, to make sure we do our due diligence on that. Oh,
And just say we could change that at any time. It doesn't have to
Yes.
wait to the end of the year.
yes, correct. Thank you, Counselor Carpenter. Next up in the queue, I have Counselor Litwin. We are at Litwin. We're at 20 minutes, so I'll go to Counselor Litwin, and then we're gonna probably go to our next presentation. And again, I invite any counselor to send questions our way, and we will respond with all the answers to everyone. Counselor Litwin.
Thank you. My questions can be answered offline. I don't expect them to be answered tonight. Chief, I'm looking at kind of two things. The first is just the inflation growth over the years, and kind of wondering if we are looking at, in terms of budget, tracking the impact and sort of like recovery of any fees from response to UVM campus. I know particularly Station 3 tends to respond to UVM campus quite frequently. And I know that UVM captures fees from students, from time to time. So I'd love to know more about, are we tracking that? Are we offsetting that cost fairly as we start to think about this UVM pilot agreement? And then the second thing is, are we tracking the impact of the opioid epidemic and crisis on our municipal kind of ratepayers, and comparing it to other large communities around Vermont, and seeing what those impacts are, so that perhaps we can lobby at the state level to recover some of those funds from the opioid settlement dollars?
Thank you, Evan. I did receive your email earlier, and we started to look into some of that data for you.
Thank you, Chief LaChance. And
Thanks
with
very much.
that, thank you, DC Curry, thank you, Chief LaChance, for the presentation. I look forward to a few more clarifying answers.
Yeah,
All right, next up on our agenda is a presentation of what will become a new department for the city of Burlington as we continue to propose this to council in the next coming weeks. We're presenting the budgets together. And Catherine, I'm not sure how you want, if you want to invite other current department heads who are part of this to the table, just so people can come to the table. I can invite the team. What we're going to do is the same thing, so sorry, 20 minutes, Catherine and team, and maybe we can start with everyone introducing themselves, and then I will actually start the timer. You, I can be generous with that, and then thank you. If you'd like to start?
Yes, I would like to start. I'm Catherine Shaw, the CAO. I am joined by Joe Turner, who is online, and since I haven't promoted him, I'm just introducing him. He is our assessor. Scott, who are you?
Scott Parker, I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for the City of Burlington. I'm Brad Kruger, I'm the Director of Finance.
Hi, Lynn Reagan, current Interim Director of Human Resources.
Excellent, and jumping right into the presentation, we have an org chart for this new department. And as you'll see in the middle, is what is currently known as the Clerk Treasurer's Office. And then surrounded by it is Human Resources on the left, with all of its amazing component parts. Then the Assessor's Office, and then also Innovation and Technology. We'll answer Sharon's questions. I don't have exact employee numbers now, but essentially, when we have talked about the kinds of changes the city is making, we have talked about things like CEDO and BWD being more like Play-Doh, in that we're taking two organizations or two existing departments, and we are not just merging them together. There is work that needs to be done to clarify that mission. In this case, we have said it's more like plugging Legos together. I brought my Legos to a recent meeting, we saw them all plug in. It's not quite that simple. There are some things like Sharon asked about data. There are two data positions currently housed in planning. We're not losing any functionality. Those positions are just moving back to IMT where they used to sit before, as we create this sort of central services department. I won't go into all the details about our highlights, even though I would love to. We are not seen as often the sexiest of departments, but we are the backbone of the city. And as you can see here, there are a lot of things which do keep the city going. We collect property taxes, we run elections, we get grants, we get other kinds of financing like general obligation bonds. And with HR, we've done a huge lift with the new citywide payroll system. We've already talked a little bit about the negotiations with police and fire underway, and that is led by HR. And then in the IT sphere, we have the new website, and we've made a lot of progress with cybersecurity, and also a lot of ways to use data, including the new vehicle telematics system, and lots of data-driven governance in general. In terms of how the two budgets compare, this gives you that view, and we have broken it up by each of the current department budgets, so you can see that. And at the top you have expenses, and at the bottom you have revenues, although the clerk treasurer's office is the only kind of big revenue generator of these four departments. You'll see we have tried to explain under the notable changes where some of those changes came from, and we can discuss in some more detail. I mentioned the reason the IT personnel expenses climbed up. There's another line, like it looks like IT has grown by $768,000. It's actually level funded, but what happened was we moved the 2 people from planning. And we also moved a significant amount of money that was for software expenses that was in the BPD will now be in the INT budget. It's just paid out of there. Scott is managing that. Because that is a best practice, and we've had BPD a little bit on an island previously. The threats to DFA, obviously budget constraints, the unknown cost pressures related to union negotiations. I think it's important to talk about employee morale in this uncertain time, and especially being the hub for HR, that's on all of our minds, and having a lot of uncertainty in the federal sphere as well as now experiencing it a bit on the city side. But where there are threats, there are always opportunities, and you can see here we have a lot of plans. We have members of the Tax Fairness Working Group. We are working hard on participatory, equitable, and multi-year budgeting. You've heard us talk about modernizing the charter, and putting us all together under this auspices of ModGov. We are confident will allow us to make a lot more progress with this integrated support, with centralizing software and systems where it makes sense, other kinds of policy work. And we are excited about all of that. Here is a quick summary about the first year for this new department. And I am happy to open it up for questions. I know I'm not as popular as the chief, who is, but any questions you have, send them my way.
6.5 minutes, so Sean, I'm impressed. Right back here, okay, but before we do that, because we have about 4 minutes, but specifically to Lynn and Scott and to Joe Turner online, is there anything you'd like to add as department heads coming into this first department? I'm not going to go read Brett, but to the department heads, you're also part of this journey ahead.
Yeah, I think
We didn't talk about this, but I
Yeah,
just wanted to make a little space of that, if there's anything else to add.
I'm good.
Okay, Lynn? No, I'm fine. Okay, all right, and Joe, I don't see hands, so we're gonna move on to counselor questions. So first I see Counselor Litwin. So Counselor Litwin, go ahead.
Thanks. I'll be really quick, and thank you, Catherine. Don't undersell your amazing department. We all appreciate the work that you do. I did want to just ask a question to CIO Baker. Sorry, Barker? Am I messing that up? I'm sorry. Our amazing CIO, and just ask about kind of the cost of cameras and maintaining the camera equipment. I may have just missed it as we were kind of flying through here, but I know that questions are coming up recently in multiple spaces that I'm in from resident groups, and most recently at a couple different community meetings that I've been at, where folks are either asking for a new camera, or in a meeting the other day with a crime victim, it was brought up that the camera at the Moran plant is so fuzzy that, you know, the footage could not be used in the case. And so I'm sort of wondering how can we make sure that as part of our public safety plan, you know, we have the funding that we need for cameras, and is that kind of built into the budget in any particular way, and how expensive is it, so that I can be more educated? Thanks.
Very quickly, I would say that new cameras cost somewhere between $1,800 per camera for the lower end 1080p resolution, which is probably what the Moran plant camera is at right now, the one you referred to. That those prices can range up to 2,800 plus for high def cameras, which allow for other pieces like zooming in on people's faces or license plate recognition, things like that. We don't, the way we ended up buying the new system and the new cameras that we put in a year and a half ago or so, was that we paid for everything all at once. So we paid for all the maintenance on the cameras and the maintenance on the systems, things like that. We do need to look at bringing one new server online this year in FY26, because we have got to a point where we're starting to see a little bit of taxing on the system in terms of the number of cameras we have. Plus, it will start to allow us to not only have the 5 servers running the system, which provides redundancy and massive amounts of storage, as you can imagine, but it also allows us to start replacing getting on a replacement cycle, because the 4 servers we have right now were all bought at the exact same time. So it's like buying 4 buses. They all need tires at the same time, they all need oil change at the same time, so that's where we're at. So we're gonna be starting to look at that. As far as buying new cameras, that's a supply chain question. We can get them through our partner, Royal Group. And again, when we buy them, we'll buy, I think it's either 3 or 5 years of maintenance and service on those cameras as well, so. Councilor, did that answer your question, or at least give some?
I think so, and maybe at some point down the line, when the dust settles with everything, there may be other counselors in the room and not in the room that might like to just learn more from you about these systems and how they work and the cost. And I won't take any more time. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilor Whitland. Are there other questions from councilors? Oh, Councilor Grant, if you want to just charging your computer. Oh, okay, I will try to turn my. It's on Councilor Grant, and then we'll go to Councilor.
I just have a real quick question. How many cameras are already owned in the city and operating?
I would have to check for certain, but I believe it's over 200 at this point. We had around 100 to 150. We added 100, but some of them were for replacements. So I think we're around the 200 range, but I can get specific.
Yeah, if you can email that to us, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Councilor McVeigh?
I was just wondering if you could walk us through, I imagine, just given the nature of the department, that a lot of these changes are going to be sort of on the internal facing side of things, but I just think it's important. Are there any areas where you all feel that city residents will see changes in how they do things as a result of, or how they do things, or how they are served by us as a result of the merger?
Only in a positive way, in that as we are moving things around, we are able to do things to free up staff resources. Like, I skipped over one of the highlights, but it was that we had someone, we were able to have taxpayers look up the balance for their property taxes for any year online. I wish that wasn't a highlight, because I feel that that's something that should have been able to happen all this time, but it never could. And so the fact that we have more resources and we're able to allocate them better means that because that's something that residents were calling for, and the fact that you have to pick up the phone and find someone and then they have to call you back sometimes, like, they wanted it to be self-service. So I think in this way, like, the pieces of work that we do that are with the public, they will be better served by us.
And just another example I'm going to offer for innovation, that even before we started the DFA conversation, and this is a customer service position, just to be clear, it's not coming into DFA, but an example is in the Letty arena. You can correct me if I'm wrong on the story. We did not have modern day technology for people to be able to pay by credit card. Do I have the story right in the entire brain? But there's an opportunity when we bring accountants and the financial teams from what are right now satellite departments back together. That level of streamlining and innovation and learning from what other departments have done since being pushed out about 10 years ago, I think will lead to this is probably the only part that a consumer, if you will, a resident or a visitor might see. I think you're gonna see our ability to be able to have more consistency in terms of the interfacing, in terms of finances. This will also see on the back end more consistency on the operation of what we call user fees, so how people interface with it for classes or a campground or whatever. And really start to bring the brains that are involved in that financial side all together to make this a one experience across the city. Anything else? Okay, sorry, did I jump over you?
No, I mean, you answered it exactly. If you think about what happened over the last 2 years with Civic Clerk, getting all of the public commissions and board meetings and everything into that system. So residents have one spot that they can go look for agendas, minutes, recordings, all of that kind of thing. We're gonna be able to do a lot more of that with this type of organization, because we're gonna be able to look at, can we move gross receipts from a very manual paper-based to an online payment process? Can we move other pieces of permitting and licensing and things like that online, so that we can make it a more streamlined version? As I talked to the mayor now and the previous mayor, we're not planning on shutting down City Hall. People can still come in and do stuff, but for those people who want to engage with us on a more digital approach, we'll be able to have that taken care of.
Okay, yeah. Councilor Broderick, and then Councilor Mulder.
Thank you. So my first question is about, I'm sorry, this is a silly question, it's about the org chart. Are these positions, like, so on the, like, for example, on fire department's org chart, for each position, it says in parentheses, there's multiple people. This one doesn't, and I assume, I don't know, are each of these positions only staffed by one person in this org chart, or like is there one data person in innovation and technology? Or is there one finance person in the treasurer's office, like?
No, and I would be happy to get you a more detailed org chart. This is more about the functions, and so it is not, you are correct, it is not clear how many people per function. So that I can get that to you.
Yeah, I think that's really important for us to see, because my question that was coming after that was with the consolidation of functions in other departments now moving into DFA. And I would be able to make a more informed question, I guess, if I do, how many each of these positions is staffed. So maybe so I don't expect an answer, because I might want that information first. My question is about workload with these responsibilities now being consolidated. And if they're if that may become a concern. This is the new thing.
Great. Okay, are you all set?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Councilor Marlowe.
Thank you. And my questions are also like IT related. I noticed under opportunities, in the last opportunities, new ERP financial system. Is that something we would expect to be undertaking anytime soon? And also that's, in my experience, those are giant undertakings when organizations implement new ERP systems that could take a year or more to sort of do.
Yes, it is a giant undertaking. We have already started planning for it. And which one of you will set lower expectations?
I
Go.
will start. Yeah, so Counselor, I'm with you. I've done others of these ERP implementations over my career, and it's never easy. It touches literally every single aspect of the organization. This won't be any different. With one caveat, we're going to start with the financial system. We're not to try to implement all of SAP tomorrow. It's not going to, I don't think it's going to be SAP, but they may bid on it, who knows. But we have started the RFP process. We are working together with BED to try to move together into the same system with BED to get some economy of scale and get some continuity on the back end. I would expect probably 12 to 18 months once we have made the decision to take that long to do the implementation, which means we're gonna have New World for at least that long as well. And it's important that we do keep the process moving because New World Tyler Tech is no longer selling New World to new customers. So we are on somewhat of a time frame that we have to keep moving. So we won't let it drag out too long, but it's an opportunity for Brad and his team in the finance department to really dig down into process and find out how to get the process as well.
Yeah, and so we've started in preparation for defining the requirements for an RFP. We've been working with Decide Management Group, and our new chief accountant, Thompson, has been doing a lot of interviewing and exploring about various processes and systems, and they've been doing an excellent job mapping everything out in its current form, and also beginning to start making suggestions of how we may want to do things in the future, so we can adequately communicate that to the companies who may be implementing the financial system. And it is I think a great, it'll be this work of mapping our business process is good on its face, but it'll be absolutely useful when we're looking at a new system, so that we, as Scott likes to say, we're not going to just buy a new system and do the same things we do now in the new system. We're going to improve and adapt our processes to maximize the technological efficiencies that we can from something 15 years dealer.
If I have other questions, I'll hold them and email them.
We have one more question. Been a great team. Councillor Singh, you get our final question.
Just a quick one. I assume, we have 3 sets of budgets here out of New World. Is this all going to be folded together next year when we look at this, because you're combining it under a Department of Finance and Administration, or will we still see each individual function as its own budget?
It will be combined into one, and in fact, it will probably be combined into one later this year. Before you vote on the budget, that is our goal.
Okay.
In the next couple weeks. Be clear. Yeah, with this fiscal year. Yes, to be clear, which ends June 3rd. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, CAO and other department heads, as we start into the path towards the Department of Finance and Administration. I appreciate it. That was well timed. Well done. That's exciting to all the city councilors for being concise in your questions. And again, if additional ones come up in this process, who to reach out to. All right, next up, we are moving on to our planning department. Welcome, Charles. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yes.
Let me get queued up before I start the timer.
Charles Diller, Director of the Office of City Planning.
We've been trying. Oh, shit. Good old internet.
Oh, I need share.
I'm not typing.
Great. Try not to take all my time.
Okay, here we go.
Right, again, Charles Diller, Director of Office of City Planning. To start with our org charts, we are, I think, the second smallest department in the city. We currently are staffed with 3 planning positions, one of which is vacant. You'll see in a couple slides in this presentation that the principal planner position is currently just filled through a promotion. So now our senior planner position is actually vacant. It's not been updated this week. We also have traditionally had a part-time temporary planner at about 30 hours a week max, not budgeted. So it's budgeted at a rate that allows somebody to work for us. We also have 10% of a full-time employee's time that we share with CETO for critical work, community engagement, and administrative support. And just also again, note 2 data positions have moved to finance administration. Highlights from fiscal year 25, we've been busy despite our small size. So we're about halfway through the New North End plan. It's been received very well by the community, and we're still, the goal here is completion, that's typo, end of year 25. The historic preservation plan, which we co-manage with the Department of Permitting Inspections, has just begun in earnest. The consultants are actually here this week, walking and driving around town to look at all of our great resources. Plan BTV open space protection plan is also ongoing. Our office is also co-managing that. And we have just begun our state required 8-year update to the comprehensive plan. In fiscal year 25, we did complete the TDM action plan, which was a product of the citywide transportation option study, as well as the impact fee study. Initially, that project was managed out of the Office of City Planning, with the department director. That project switched over to clerk treasurer's office. We adopted 3 significant zoning amendments in fiscal year 25. We've got 5 in progress. Notable amendments include the 2 here, neighborhood codes part 2A and 2B, performing arts centers in South End and Champlain College, Bed Cap. We've also led and supported the South End Coordinated Redevelopment, provided a support role for the Memorial Block redevelopment. Our staff has been a leader in the internal community engagement working group. We've continued to maintain a really strong relationship with ARP and conducted some winter placemaking. Then you might have seen the pom-poms that were up the month of April along North Avenue. We have been awarded a few grants, including mobility and transportation operations grant, as well as more recently the municipal planning grant. The data and analytics team continues to provide crucial data analytics work for all city departments. And just to respond to Sharon Butcher's comment on there, we are not losing access to the data team, of course. For many years and throughout that team's existence, they have provided data support and analytics and really leadership to all departments. And I think the move just sort of reflects that relationship. Really notably as well, the data team, along with Scott and his INT team, secured What City Silver certification for the city, and as well, the data team is working on the taxpayer is working as well. Looking at cost savings for fiscal year 26, we're proposing to eliminate that seasonal and temporary position. We've traditionally had that position filled every year, and it's provided really important work, although we are prepared to tighten our belts and make do without it for the next year. Through our decisions in promotions and hiring decisions, we have been able to modestly reduce our salaries and wages budget line item, and commensurate reduction in employee benefits. Office supplies, equipment, dues, subscriptions are all reduced for fiscal year 26, as well as our travel and training. In fiscal year 25, we were budgeted to receive $14,000 in revenue from a CLG grant for the Historic Preservation Plan. That grant is actually a reimbursement grant that is distributed at the end of the project, and we anticipate to complete that project very early in fiscal year 27. So we're forecasting that we will receive the entire $28,000 of that grant in fiscal year 27. We did receive the modest, very small $4,000 grant from ARP for that winter placemaking, and that money was consumed. In the fiscal year 26 budget, we project $30,000 in revenue from the municipal planning grant. That's to support very technical services related to Plan BTV that we do not have expertise for in our office. Expenses, so fiscal year 25 budget was $770,000. Our actual is a bit lower, quite lower. A lot of that is due to the vacancy of the principal planner position almost for the entirety of the year. We will basically have had a vacant position for the entirety of this year 25, and all of the related sort of benefits there. Fiscal year 26 budget is proposed therefore to be about 9% less than fiscal year 25 at 701,000. A little over a third of which is in the professional and consulting services line, which is funding contracted work that has already begun. Again, plan B and the preservation plan and the plan B update. Areas of concern. This is tangential to our work, but very critical to the city's overall mission and objective. The federal funding cuts for many types of work, including capital projects, is likely to slow the implementation of Plan BTV and all of our related area topic plans, as well as to importantly risk diminishing the city and private sector's capacity in housing production. Opportunities in fiscal 26, the long range plans that have begun in fiscal 25 will conclude in either fiscal 26 or 27. The Plan BTV update is expected to conclude in late 2026. And with full staffing and potential for greater collaboration and integration with other planning functions in the city, we expect greater efficiency. We've already seen that happen in our work where through close collaboration with planners at DPW and parks and CEDO, we've been able to save a good bit of staff time and resources. So just to conclude, final highlights. The budget is proposed to decrease slightly, though the change is minor. The number of staff, again, we are losing the 2 data teams. We're not proposing to add any more planner positions. 6. Just note that the significant professional and consulting services requests in our budget are due to the very small size of our office, some of the technical expertise that is required in a lot of our plans, notably things like target analysis, historic preservation work. These are things that really only large cities have the capacity to have in-house. I will note, though, that Vermont has a very strong regional planning model, and CCRPC provides very strong support to us and other county. A little over $100,000 of our budgeted salaries and wages unspent this year, as I'm saying.
Well done, under 2 minutes, 8.5 around there, so not that anyone is competitive with the city government, but okay. All right, thank you, Charles, very much. Questions from councilors? Councilor Schechter.
I just have a quick clarification question, and maybe I just did not hear you at the very beginning, but on the, it looks like salaries and wages are being held roughly constant from this year to next year, like the actuals for this year. They go up by about maybe 50K, and the big jump in the budget from actuals to next year is that professional and consulting services, that 240,000.
That's the big jump. Yeah, the salaries are remaining.
So does that mean you're eliminating the vacant roles, because to kind of hold salaries constant?
We're eliminating the part-time temporary position.
Okay.
We're not eliminating the vacant position. That position is actually posted right now.
So, but the salary, I guess then I'm wondering how the salary that's been budgeted covers those 3 positions if it's kind of held constant, having had that vacancy this year. Is that making sense?
The salary line that was in our fiscal year 25 budget, it just means that through that position remaining vacant, we've not spent any of that money. The city has not spent any of that money paying that non-existent person. So I think that's why the actual salary line is much lower than. Is that?
No, I totally get that. I just think that the proposed budget for next year matches the lower salary for this year, not what was budgeted for this year. So I'm wondering if that means that vacancy is expected. I'm just not totally.
No, the salary line you're seeing does cover the
okay. Even though it's fairly consistent with the actuals from this year, it's a modest increase, not a. Okay, thank you. I just did that clarification.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other questions? Councilor Grant?
I had a question about
our data person. And so when they do data for the police and fire department, is that all taken out of your budget or is there any sharing of that position?
The salaries are paid from our budget and have been for a few years since they've been implemented.
We have, just to add on to that, a decision was made before I got to the city that for cases like that, where it would be intergeneral fund, that it was, speaking frankly, like more trouble than it was worth to pay ourselves right hand to left hand, but if that data person was working for water, airport, electric, an enterprise fund or a special revenue fund, we would certainly charge them and the general fund would get reimbursed.
That's okay. So good night and good online.
Just a quick question on consultant. We've been, I'm sure you remember our conversation about TDM and some issues that people kind of felt like the consultants had missed, and I don't think you're the one who hired them. I was just wondering if we have, given the large percentage of your budget that goes to consultants, I think it's important that we have like really robust criteria for choosing and hiring our consultants. And I think in the context of planning, there a global require like that people use Vermont consultants with knowledge of Vermont and all of our special opportunities to challenge here. I'm just wondering if you could speak to that, if that's something that you have either in your mind or that's what I don't want happening, which I saw in TDM, sort of like a cookie cutter approach or just a thing. Yeah, based on other cities that didn't fit basically the need of a college town. And so I want to make sure we're well positioned to have the best.
Much of our work is funded in part through CCRPC, and they have a list of pre-qualified consultants. We are not bound to select from the list of qualified consultants if we feel that they are not adequate for the work. And we're allowed to hire outside. I wouldn't quite, regarding the TDM consultant, the consultant we hired, I was involved in that process, is generally known as the national leader in transportation demand management. I think some of the challenges that you're referring to are a result of the lack of engagement that on the community side, we didn't receive a lot of attention that. And yes, due to that, we didn't hear some of the concerns during the process. We have heard some of the concerns now. I have spoken to the consultants about this issue, and yeah, I think they feel that had they heard some of the concerns about that recommendation, but not. We do have Vermont. We are fairly lucky to have a good pool of consultants in the region and the state. However, we do not have the depth of consultant skills and expertise for much of our work. Our historic preservation plan, for example, did receive a submittal from a team consisting of Vermont-based folks, but we ultimately went with an out-of-state group who really had experience that far outmatched the competition. So we do take our consultant selection very seriously, and we don't make those decisions in a bubble. We include consult with others around the state. Keep that in mind about your
I do just want to, I am a consultant myself, and I totally, like, sometimes it's great if you find Vermont-based, sometimes the skills just aren't there, and I know you also have worked in a number of other cities, and I imagine you have a robust network yourself, and so I think, I guess I'm just wanting to make sure we have a robust criteria. we can talk offline maybe.
Sure.
My question is about the temporary position. So is that position been cut or is it being?
It's proposed to be cut in our fiscal year.
I guess about that decision, so I know you just posted the senior planner position, just posted, so it's, you don't have an answer, it's fine, what do you think of the timeline for, getting to like the selecting process?
That's good enough. The posting will close on the 28th of May, and I would very much like to have somebody in that position as soon as July 1st as possible. We have a limited pool of planners in Burlington. Vermont doesn't have a planning school that's producing planners, so a lot of times we get hired out of state. That involves finding housing. That's been a big impediment, frankly, for a lot of our candidates. But yes, so as soon as possible, if we can find a local candidate who is qualified and hire them, we can probably get somebody in.
So, that's good news. But in the case where you can't, I don't know the qualifications for senior planner versus this the org chart lower planner position. If you cannot find a senior planner by July 1st, but there are less qualified people that wouldn't put it as a senior planner, but as like a stopgap, you put in that temporary 6-month planner position. Does that consideration, that potential scenario, take it in your opinion worth keeping that temporary position frozen, break glass if you not find a senior planner?
Yeah, I'm optimistic we can get somebody in, and I wouldn't. We're all being asked to tighten our belts here, and our budget is very small. $30,000 is around the area of most departments. For us, it's a little bit of a dent in our budget. That's one thing that I'm committed to losing of fiscal 26. So I think we've managed to now sort of 2+ a temporary employee for almost a year now. And we can make do for another couple months.
Counselor, other questions? Counselor Travers,
Yeah.
a minute and a half.
Okay. Charles, I was emailing with you about this, specifically on the professional consultant services side. I wonder, can you break down how much of that is our things that are sort of currently tied up to folks that we've already entered into agreements with, and then how much of it is for sort of agreements to be determined, and then having, if you don't have it now, or see, a little bit here.
So starting chronologically, the New North End plan has a budget of about $250,000, 200 of which is funded directly through CRPC. So we have a match of about $56,000. That's our match. The historic preservation plan and the New North End plan, for that matter, were first initially funded in 2022. The preservation plan has a budget of about $200,000, including a contingency that we're hoping not to have to dig into. $28,000 of that will be returned via a CLG grant, and the remainder, which is about $36,000, is for the municipal plan. And our match there is $6,000. So we have revenue of $58,000 there, actually $58,000 plus the 200. Good bit coming through either CCRPC or state.
Okay. I'll just, we're gonna make a comment and then we'll be done.
Okay.
Which is sort of looking towards the future, right?
seems like, I know that a number of these are one-off projects, right? It's for us to have some expertise. But I think some of this as well is stuff that if you had, us staff could be done in-house, maybe. And as we look over the course of next fiscal year, right, and are considering spending more money on professional contracted services, it's just an invitation for you to come back and to, even in mid-fiscal year, rather than bringing in another contractor, standing up another FTE, if you think it is something that could be done in-house, I would be very open to considering that.
All right, with that, thank you very much, Charles. Thank you, counselors. Moving right along. Next up is our beloved Fletcher Library, joined by Mary. Welcome, Mary. Thank you. Filibuster and some mental stress. Many good books, thank you. Now it's answering.
We started a lending library
Really?
because we're not just accountants.
Your readers?
We are also readers. Yes.
You know, I thought it's a romance novel, which is not appropriate. I can't remember how old some of your oldest are, but I have to say.
No judgment.
For the record in the public, I'm just going to look for a local author who just published a great book that would be good for 4th, 5th graders. You can buy it at Phoenix Books, and she's a New North End Ward 4, I think, resident, Kelly Magnet. So she is fabulous, and we've read the chapter 2. I not say that publicly, but maybe. Yeah. Read the book. We've read chapter 1, and my daughter, personal endorsement, that is the best first chapter she has ever read in any book.
Wow.
Yeah.
That just melts a librarian's heart.
Oh, I love it. On that happy to promoting Burlington authors and books and reading, we now will hear from Fletcher Free Library.
So Mary Danko, Director of the Fletcher Free Library. We have a fantastic staff. They work really, really hard. And we have the downtown branch and we have our new North End branch. And just to say more about that, many, many highlights in here, which I'm not going to go over, but as I said to the mayor and to CAO Chad, I just wanted to put this in here so it's kind of memorialized and hopefully we'll read it at some point. The library was affected by the reductions in force. Our part-time financial assistant position was eliminated, and those tasks, most of them will be taken on through Modern Gov and the work that's going to happen in Catherine's office. And then our part-time computer assistant position was eliminated. And we are continuing to do efficiency work in each department. I said this last year, but many of us at the library are trained in Lean. And when we look at our processes, we use the Lean way of looking at things. For those of you that don't know, it's a Toyota endeavor, and so continue to do that. And as part of the service inventory process that we went through with the mayor's office, we are now starting to use that within each of our departments at the library. So, and that continues to go well. So these are the big buckets that I put this in for you all every year. And the thing that I want to point out here is a few things. The collection fund is the half-cent tax, the splinter tax, or there's another name for it. I always call it the splinter tax. That is for everything that is in our collection that can be loaned out, as well as the digital services that we provide. So that is a nice, healthy fund that allows us to be what I think is the best library state, and I even think we're one of the best libraries in the country because I think we just have such a great staff. The other thing I want to point out is last year the mayor made a real investment in the library in safety and security, and we really were working on how do we
do the best that we can. And there was a couple things. One is we moved away from contracted security and we brought that in-house. So that's why you're seeing the security line in FY25 that was so high, and now that is now in personnel because those are our staff members. I will tell you that that has made a difference. We were hoping that when we had in-house security that would make a difference because they would feel part of the team. They would have access to our network. They would have keys and IDs. It has made a difference, and we are really feeling that there. The other part of that investment was having someone from the Howard Center, and it's an outreach person that is now embedded at the library Tuesday through Saturday. That investment will continue next year. We're so grateful for that. I will say this whole time that we have been looking for grant funding for that. We do feel there's a possibility there, but as you may know, in the philanthropical world right now, the foundations and the places where we usually have been looking for funds are now putting out fires in all other kinds of places. That doesn't mean we're not going to stop that work because we really think there's some potential there. So again, you'll see some of that investment that was in security in FY25. I pulled that out and you'll see it's the patron outreach specialist for the FY26 budget. Moving on to the threats and opportunities, there's a whole bunch in there. A couple things I want to point out is, the housing crisis that is around us affects the library. When people are unhoused, they turn to the library, as you know. And the day shelters, when they're not operating or when they aren't open, that affects the library as well. Bathrooms, as some of you may know, we are only one of the 3 public bathrooms downtown, City Hall and the Portland Loo that's in City Hall Park. And some of the businesses downtown actually tell people our bathrooms aren't available, but you can go to the library or you can go to City Hall. Even with all the security investments that we have, and like I said, we're really feeling that it's helping. That is still an ongoing thing that has to be, considered. The other thing I wanted to mention is the federal funding. Right now we have an NEH grant that is, well, maybe you remember approving that. It's been a long process. It was a 3-to-1 match. We are kind of in an unclear zone right now with that. And we continue to think about safety and security at the library. It's continuous. One of the things we also have is we have a community partners desk. And at that desk, we have different organizations that come in there and sit, and they offer their services to the community. We just heard from a new community partner that just came on that it's been great, and they've been really been able to connect with people. I do want to point out our Friends of the Fletcher Free Library. They are a 501c3 nonprofit. They are to support the library. They take in revenue from all different sources, as you'll see there on the left, and they pay for things that we do. They pay for our programming. They pay for sometimes when we just need little odds and ends, and they pay for our professional development. So in our budget, we have no professional development, we have no training, we have no travel. That's all paid for by the Friends. Something else I wanted to say about the Friends. Oh, and oftentimes they can be a fiscal agent for us as well. Because they are a 501c3, we can apply for different kinds of grants, and then they roll through the Friends. And I did want to point out that we have about 90 volunteers that work at our libraries right now. Last fiscal year, they gave almost 6,900 hours of their time. So in summary, we've got our staff that was decreased by the 2 part-time positions. We still continue on our capital campaign project that I've been talking about for many, many years. We were able to break off one piece, which was that preservation project, which, as you know, we did get some grants for. And that is set to begin, actually, we might see fencing go up in the next couple weeks. And that is going to be huge, because there needs a lot of work that needs to be done on the masonry. The building was built in 1904, and the terracotta, and the windows will come out. They will be sent to New Hampshire, rehabilitated, and come back. And so not only will the building be preserved and restored, it will also be more energy efficient, because that's one of the things we found out. And we still continue on our silent fundraising campaign as we move towards that big remodeling project we're looking for. That's all I have.
Past counselors, questions for? Hi, so I'm gonna go with the alphabet, Counselor.
Thank you. I have a question about the operations at the North Avenue branch. Do you anticipate any changes, either increased hours or decreased hours?
No decreased hours. I think with the changes in staffing, we're gonna rumble through that change, I think, over the next few months, but we are always looking for opportunities to expand out there. It's very, very well loved and has
Highly valued.
Yeah.
And that's
good to hear.
Thank you.
Counselor Barlow, Counselor Travers.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Mary. I don't have much to ask about here. Although, for your department and other departments that unfortunately were impacted by service reductions, I will have some clarifying questions around, we've received a sheet around the computer assistant position, an indication that your belief, correct me if I'm wrong here, is that those services can be easily absorbed by other staff. My question ultimately is going to be, as a library user, right, is the reduction, how is the reduction in that staff member going to be felt? So that's a question for you, if at all. And then I think the question for the CAO is, there are a number of positions here that were in finance related roles where there's an indication that will be picked up by staff and now consolidated department that we have there. And just overall sort of a gut check around whether staff that are already doing quite a bit for the city are going to be able to fully absorb all the tasks that are done by positions that are involved in finance. This is sort of the first come to with the library, but we'll be addressing it in parks as well and some of the other departments. So at some point, whether now or in a future budget presentation, I just want to make sure that as we're reviewing those positions, that these truly are tasks that can be taken by your department. But Mary, we start with you around what the impact of a library user, how they're going to feel this.
Sure. We're still, working through it. The idea is that some of the folks that were doing work at different desks will now go over to the computer center where this position was mostly at. It was 20 hours per week. And they will not take on any new responsibilities, any new work. They'll do the work that they were doing at another desk there. And if a question comes up that involves, a higher technology interaction, they might have to say, I'm sorry, the technology librarian isn't on at this time, they'll be back on at 3, or can we take your name and number? Can we call you back to set something up? Or if there's somebody in the building, they might say, can you just hold on a minute and I'll see if I can call someone up to help you. So those are the ways that we're thinking about doing that. There may be occasions where we put the sign up too and say, we just don't have anybody here right now, and please go to the main desk and we'll figure out the way to get you the help that you need.
Okay, thank you. It doesn't need to be now, it's just.
Yeah, great, I can wait.
Well, I will just, and I'm sure you're gonna ask this again in the Parks presentation, so I will just say in general, as I said on Monday night, that part of the work now is working with the departments that are most impacted by the reduction in force to do what I'm rephrasing is calling work cataloging, because we already use service inventory, so not use inventory, but work cataloging around the positions and the work that was done by these positions, working with each of the department heads, working with HR, reviewing the JDs, but also, of course, the real life work that these positions were doing to make sure we're being very clear about what work is winding down and ending. What work it is that might be absolutely necessary will need to be picked up by someone else. That list is supposed to be very minimal. That is part of all the outgrowth of the service inventory work we've been spending weeks on. To be very diligent about not increasing workload on additional city staff. This is also a new process for the city, so we're doing this as diligently as possible and as quickly as possible. But there is a transition period of time right now, which we all acknowledge, and we will be working through this with each department and impacted staff, remaining staff. Anything else you want to add? So, okay. Other questions? Let me practice. Schacter.
Like a shack.
Shack, sure. With a Schacter. Yeah, Schacter. Got it.
First of all, I know.
Nickname.
Shack attack. Awesome. That's the text thread of the whole Schacter family. First of all, we are such a big family fan of the library, so thank you for all your service. It's such a beautiful pillar of our community. My question, I'm interested, being sort of in philanthropy in the nonprofit world, sort of you're speaking about the National Endowment for the Humanities, that you don't know where that's going to go. I'm living a similar world professionally in some ways, and it's interesting having the Friends of Fletcher free, and I'm just curious, like when you're sort of looking at revenue stuff, does some of that philanthropic support go through the nonprofit and not directly impact the city per se? Of course, it directly impacts the library, but like, how do you sort of account for some of this uncertainty in that type of funding in how you're thinking about the budget for this year? I guess is the question.
You know, that's hard. I think uncertainty is the right word for it. I feel like we have a lot of raving fans out there, which is helpful. But I just don't know. You know, I would say, you know, on the slide, you saw that the annual appeal for the Friends, we do that. This was our best year ever for that, which was good. It's hard to know. So because they're not a budget like the city is, they can pivot. So what our conversations with them have been about, we will submit our request for what we would like from them.
Yep.
And we're gonna do that next month. And what has happened in the past when we, like during the COVID years when we weren't sure, they would say, okay, we're going to, you know, let you, okay, you know, we're gonna say okay for now, but in 6 months, if we're not, you know, generating the income that we need from our annual appeal, from our book sales, our eBay sales, we might have to cut back on things. So I think we're going into a period where they're just gonna keep looking close and we're gonna be in close communication.
That makes total sense. So those NEH dollars and things like that most directly impact the Friends of Fletcher and sort of will then dictate what and how much they're able to provide materials.
Yeah, the NEH one is for the building project, so that is a city one that came through, so again, we're just watching that very, very closely.
There's no way to know.
Sometimes it is day to day right now with these things. And I know, I'm sure you follow the news as well, and even the attack on libraries has been day to day, so 2 weeks ago, if you would have asked me about the Institute for Museum and Library Services, that office was decimated. And the issue is those funds were going to the Vermont Department of Libraries, but then they came down to the library. And so for lack of a better word, the panic that ensued and the way that we all had to come together and, you know, we were just working hard for everything that we could do to make it happen. And luckily, this state's Attorney General, Charity Clark, joined a lawsuit against the Trump administration saying, you cannot do this. Those funds were appropriated by Congress already, but it took that level of energy, and then the Vermont Library Association, which I'm currently
Best seniors
president of
khaki
right
pants
now,
under $35.
partnered with them and said,
Youthful
can
and
we give you a letter? Can we give you, support? And it was throughout the nation, all of these libraries that were working together. And then, 2 days go by and something else happens. And then just recently, the Librarian of Congress, Dr. Carla Hayden, was fired. So it just feels like every day, it's hard, and it's sometimes hard to answer these questions, and we're just doing the best that we can.
Absolutely.
And moving forward. So,
You're doing a great job.
well, thank you. And I think it's just hard on a national level to, that sometimes the impacts, there's like two intermediary things between. And you just kind of don't know where things are gonna fall, but I will say that myself and my fellow librarians are very motivated to keep protesting, because, I'm sorry, I feel like I have to say this, libraries are part of this democracy. You're the cornerstone of democracy, and it's about the freedom of speech, and the freedom of information and access. And so it is a nonpartisan issue to us. And so we are going to really, really fight on all these fronts. Absolutely. Thank you. Sorry, get off my soapbox now.
Okay, your pile of books, actually.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Fletcher.
But I was not stepping on library books.
Oh, no, you're not. I know when
Are you not supposed to?
Not that I might know a small child who did that once in a book, which we've been purchased. I think I see a hand from, are you all set, Councilor Shachter?
Thank you. Sorry, from Shachter.
I'll get it. Councilor Littman, we're almost at time, so I'm gonna give you the last question to you.
Thanks. And most of my things got answered. Mary, I really appreciate all the work you do and the uniqueness of the role you have found yourself in since COVID, particularly at our downtown library. So I've seen you in action, as in wearing many hats you shouldn't have to wear. So I appreciate that. I did want to just call out quickly, and I think that your comments just now really set this up nicely, that I would like to better understand in the future, and maybe you can share this with us. I think your first slide, which had sort of your FY25 and 26 breakdown, indicated that about 9%, 10% of the city budget, of the library budget, goes to security, but I think you said it's funded through a tax, and sorry if I missed that through the Zoom. And I'd love to better understand that. That's like, 25 plus grand a month. So I'd love to better understand. I know some of it's the Howard Center position that you talked about. And then I think when we approved that position last year, I had made comments during the council meeting that I was, really hoping that there would be a strong evaluation process of this role, that we would be able to assess the efficacy of the role at some point. And I think, now is probably not that time yet, but perhaps we're heading in that direction. And sort of understand what the security costs are, because I do think we need to start, if we're not already, just doing a really good job of understanding how much we're spending as a result of responding to the situation that we're in, with the housing crisis, with the opioid crisis. And I agree with you, libraries have played really important roles at really tough times in US history. And I think about the Great Depression and, the creation of the bookmobiles 100 years ago, as a result of that, and the roles that libraries played then and now. So I'm not saying that these aren't important functions, but I am increasingly hearing concern from folks in the New North End that they want to pick up their books at the New North End Library because they don't feel safe or comfortable bringing their children to the library downtown. And so any way we can continue to facilitate that without increasing costs or cutting things. I know Councilor Barlow brought up the importance of the New North End Library, but that is becoming, as a result of the security situation, at least for my constituents, that's becoming more desirable for more people.
I could just say a couple things. It is very hard to measure what you're preventing. So I really feel that, anecdotally, I can say it feels a lot better. I think people are noticing it. I think we can measure what people's perception is within a year, but I do think, it's really helping to set a tone. I would say, when I hear that, people say that they don't wanna come downtown for whatever reason, I would like to remind people, our staff is coming down every day and they're doing the work and we feel like it's good. And I would say even with some of our children's programs, the other day, well, it was probably 2 weeks ago now, I happened to be going through and, we had 60 people in the youth area between kids and caregivers singing along with Linda. And I took a picture because there was probably 12 strollers in the youth area. So there are moms and dads and caregivers and, pushing those strollers, downtown and into our downtown library and having a great time. So I guess I would encourage folks, like we want both of our branches to be vibrant and then hopefully you find something at both the branches and come on downtown and have something to eat and lunch and go to the library. We think it's a great destination place too, and we will keep working on it. We want downtown to be vibrant too, and we're gonna keep making it a great destination place for great programming. Look for great stuff happening this summer too.
I agree with you. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate
Thanks.
your
Thanks.
sentiment.
Mary, all right, and with that, we're gonna move on to our last review. Department for tonight at least, which is our list.
Two more.
All right, I'm really tired now. We have two very important. Equally important, I do not have favorites. First, our second to last department, organizational equity, inclusion, and belonging office. Christian, welcome. Let you get set up. Thanks for
Question, are we on under a different name that I don't? Okay.
Why don't I just do it right in this guy had your thing right up here and that leads to this. Let's start the screen share computer.
Okay, you got it right. Yeah.
We are.
Okay.
Get away. All right. Good evening, everyone. Christian Berry, my pronouns are she, they. I am the interim director for the Office of Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, commonly referred to as the REIB. So this is the proposed organizational chart for FY26, utilizing information that we gleaned from the Modern Gov process and also our vision and purpose work, which I'll touch on in a little bit. This is the new organizational structure that we are proposing for the REIB. It includes 5 FTEs, including a permanent director, an administrative and financial coordinator, and 3 program managers whose work will focus on community engagement and outreach, policy development and analysis, education and training, and health equity. So this new structure also embeds the Trusted Community Voices program in the REIB, which is transitioned from CEDO, where we'll be able to amplify, increase this program's ability to amplify voices and trust from our immigrant and refugee population specifically. So really excited about that connection and that integration in terms of being able to elevate that team, who is doing really important and critical work throughout this community. So I would be remiss if I didn't also just note that it would be impossible for the REIB to do the work that we are poised to do for FY26 without this administration's commitment to funding this office. So moving it from one-time funding to general fund dollars actually enables us to do work that is more at the systemic level instead of doing one-off programming. So thank you for that commitment. Also, I had planned out way more than 8 minutes. So I had in real time also just like carving this down. So excuse me if I take a second. So one of the highlights that I want to talk about is what I just touched on, which was our vision and purpose work, which was a robust community engagement effort. We began meeting with the mayor's office in June of last year to really begin establishing diversity, equity, and inclusion as the city's ethos towards good governance. And so what does that mean? It means, what does it look like when we embed equity in the very fabric of city governance? How do we manifest these principles in our values, beliefs, and aspirations? And how do we demonstrate this commitment throughout our actions? So we engaged in 7 sessions across 5 wards between August 24 and November 2024. We attracted over 70 attendees with over 50 organizations participating throughout these sessions. We offered hybrid sessions so that folks could be in person and also remote. We hosted the sessions near public transportation routes to ease the burden on our community members in order to increase their ability to participate. We offered the sessions at different times, and the session information was shared widely through multiple channels and in multiple languages. So we are really proud of that work, and that work also brought forth the vision and purpose, which I didn't actually include a slide here, but I do have copies if people are interested in reading through that. But as I noted, so the vision and purpose sessions, along with the targeted surveys, because so folks who weren't able to participate in the sessions, we did send the information as a survey that they could complete and then send it to the office so that their voices could still be represented. And then we use that data to really inform the redesign of the Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Office. So those sessions and the Modern Gov work really directed the statements, but also our personnel and our programmatic priorities. So it's just a reminder that the work of the REIB is not static. It is, I'd say it's a living, breathing thing. As we are seeing right now at the federal level, it changes what we need to respond to in real time. So as I noted earlier, it's fine. Community engagement is a priority for this office, and we'll continue to ensure that the voices and perspectives of those most impacted by the city policies and programs are included and elevated throughout the next fiscal year. So the other highlight for FY25 was our empowerment grant program. So this year marked a significant milestone with the launch of an equitable, low barrier empowerment grant program. And that program is designed to address economic disparities by providing targeted financial outreach and support to BIPOC residents, businesses, and organizations. So our commitment to fostering economic equity led to impactful funding initiatives that strengthen our community. The Empowerment Grant has played a crucial role in promoting equity, access, and empowerment for BIPOC community members by channeling those resources directly into the hands of individuals, organizations, and small businesses. So this funding supported numerous community building efforts, fostering local initiatives that strengthen our social fabric. So this program was also started with one-time funds, and so it will be sunsetting after this next round of disbursements. And we think it's really important that at the conclusion of the program, we recognize the need to sustain our commitment to equity and resource allocation. And so the process of creating a robust empowerment grant program helped establish more equitable granting processes that we can implement across the city throughout various departments. So this initiative aims to enhance consistency and fairness in how resources are distributed, thereby continuing to support initiatives that empower underrepresented groups and address systemic inequities. So there were some significant transitions in the RAIB over the last year, which led to cost savings for FY26. So both at the leadership level and at the staff level, we had unfilled positions, which totaled around $250,000 in cost savings. And as I noted just a couple minutes ago, the empowerment grant will also sunset after this fiscal year, and so that's a cost savings of about $90,000. So for our expenses, our staff, personnel, and benefits increased to just under $95,000 with the addition of the Trusted Community Voices team, and we also are incorporating language access into our budget. Our operating costs remain quite steady with an increase of only $1,400. Our racism as a public health emergency line is now referred to as program delivery, and that'll be a little bit more clear in terms of how we're utilizing those funds once we onboard a team and really get clear about the priorities, programmatic priorities over the next fiscal year. Our community celebrations line was bumped up by about $30,000, and that's really to acknowledge that right now our primary community celebration is Juneteenth, and we also recognize that there are other community celebrations and other diverse communities that we need to represent better throughout the city. And again, empowerment fund is going away, but we did add a budget for language access across the city, which aligns with our vision to work to ensure that all community members are actively engaged and represented throughout city governance. So there are threats and opportunities. A few folks have talked about the federal policy changes and how that impacts our work. So while we aren't grant funded because we're part of the general fund, our other departments who are also doing equity initiatives throughout the city and our community partners who are also doing some of this work are absolutely impacted, and that affects us internally as well. DEI rollback, so walking back the principles of diversity, equity, inclusion at the federal level leads to programs being cut or eliminated completely. And I will add that there's also just growing sentiment against the work of DEI. And so that increasing perception that DEI initiatives are divisive or unnecessary really impacts the work that we're able to do. So not only does it challenge our legitimacy as an office and the importance of equity work throughout the city, it erodes community support for essential equity initiatives, creates barriers to progress, and quite frankly, it creates a city or a community that is unsafe. But there's also opportunities. So we had just posted for the permanent director position. So that position will be posted through the end of this month. And we will hopefully have a permanent director on board by July 1. We'll also be recruiting for 2 additional program managers to move forward with the implementation of key initiatives and increase the RAIB's capacity to better serve the community effectively. Our sustainable programs, so implementation of programs and policies that create a lasting impact on community engagement and support. Again, when the funding was not stable, we were, again, just kind of putting Band-Aids on things. And so it wasn't, we weren't able to really dig deep into the systemic issues and address those at a systems level. And then our community engagement initiatives, so looking forward to enhancing the collaboration with our community partners and organizations to foster more inclusive practices and build trust. So when we did the vision and purpose work, we heard a lot of feedback, as you can imagine. Some of it was not positive, but the things that were positive centered around the fact that folks have been in the city for 20, 30 years, and it was the first time that they had been asked to engage in a process like this at a city level. And so that was really positive. So we look forward to continuing that engagement throughout the community. And some final highlights. So working with the REIB City Council to charter the office. And this ensures the protection of critical work and reinforces the city's commitment to upholding the principles of diversity, equity, inclusion, and I will add accessibility to that as well. Enhanced services for inclusive community integration. So again, by folding in the TCBs and language access into the REIB, it just allows us to better serve everybody throughout the community in a more inclusive and supportive way. And then finally, community engagement initiatives. This is just another example, working very closely with the Burlington Police Department's Information and Community Engagement Officer. So went around and met with some local community-based organizations, specifically youth-based organizations. So King Street, Spectrum, Boys and Girls Club, to really talk about how our work is interconnected and to figure out ways that the REIB and the BPD could work together to better support the members of our community who are underserved, underrepresented, and marginalized. So looking forward to continuing more of that work.
All right, now to questions. Good night. I admit this is not really a question, but I just feel the need to express appreciation for REIB and the work that you all are doing. And as you mentioned, the assault on DEI that is happening across the country is it's having ripple effects in so many ways. And I see that as a call to support this department and this work even more. And I think it's really important that say that when
other questions? That's great. So I have a couple of things. First is a question. So on the police department side, the person who was in the PIO engagement position has was part of the reduction of force. So I guess I don't expect an answer, and maybe this gets added to be added as an item for a meeting with the systematic issues of parts of our community continuing to have issues with equity in policing and some pretty severe issues with regards to trust from children to adults. I think we have to think of a way how that work continues. Do you have in the new interim chief someone who I feel open to that work? Which is important because that's been influenced in the past. So I just wanted to throw that out in terms of, well, not throw that, but just say this is something that we really need to be thinking of because we have repeatedly failed to heal old wounds, especially in the old North End. And I would think also parts of Ward 5 and parts of Ward 1 where there's overlapping communities with regards to that. And then the second thing is I agree with Councilor McKnight with her words, and I just want to say that I really support you. And so you support your ability to juggle a lot. There's been nonstop changes that have been going on. And our community is really looking for us to stabilize things. was talking to the mayor earlier and I did express that I support you to be the director of this department, and I know you put your name in. I'm loath to see another change. I don't think that it would help to stabilize. I think it would raise more issues. So thank you for everything that you do. Continue to stay about. Thank you.
To your first part, I can say that I have had a number of conversations already with Chief Berg, the interim Chief Berg. And we are very committed to figuring out how to better partner between the RIB and PD. So we will continue to have ongoing conversations. And so once we have more information to share in terms of what that outreach and that plan looks like, certainly bring it back to the council, to the RIB City Council, and to this group.
That's excellent. I was thinking about sending him the video from the infamous 2017 incident in Roosevelt Park, because that has had lasting effects and people still talk about it. And I was on the campaign trail, people, especially people who work with children, continue to bring that up, because the kids that were affected back then have gotten older, but they're still in our community as young adults. So it is something that was deeply troubling, but I will we'll discuss that further at another time. Thank you.
Yeah, I have found him to be deeply committed, deeply responsive, and I think if, you know, his approach, we were just talking the other day, if he knows of something, he wants to address it, he wants to engage in the conversation, so.
Okay, I'll send him over that. Thank you.
Council Grant also had, Christian and I have been on a few different meetings of late in the last few months, including with our Chesapeake Voices partners, as well as the Vermont, help me.
Connect, the
Yes,
Vermont
thank you.
National, or no, the Vermont Association. New American Advisory Council.
Thank you.
Very,
So they had a report that they issued actually back in December. Three departments heads have had conversations during this a few different rounds. We made sure that as well as Christian, that this is exists for Chief Berg, and to also make sure to, as he continues to build and start building relationships with community organizations and be really aware of our immigrant refugee community. And that was well the request again when we met with those critical partners, but also with TCB as well. So
because that the 2017-2018 1-2 punch was the issues in Roosevelt Park, which primarily affected New American kids and Black children, and then the lawsuits with the Millie brothers. Those have had lasting effects. And one of the main problems with maybe not to describe it as, well, no, actually it is kind of a problem. Most of our police officers do not live in the city of Burlington. So they are not interacting on a regular basis with the people that they serve in some of the communities. And looking at the percentage of BIPOC kids in the schools, it's really dramatically changing. Our whole community is changing in terms of. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. So we're starting to run out of time, so we'll move on. I see Councilor Littman, and are there any other councilors interested in a question?
I have heard the question.
Okay, so we'll go to Councilor Littman, and then we'll go to Councilor Chatters. We have about 3 minutes left, just for folks to know.
Okay, thanks. And thank you so much for the presentation. It's helpful to see just the sheer scale of work that's being done out of a small office. So my question might actually be, somebody else in the room might jump in, or it might be you as well, Director. But I was curious, when I looked at the org chart, what, and I'm a new-ish counselor, what is the difference in someone's work that makes somebody a manager versus a coordinator if there's not somebody reporting up to them? And I would just love to better understand that. And maybe our CAO or our mayor or somebody else can explain that to me.
That is an excellent question for HR. Lynn, I don't know if you heard that question, but it is something that comes up kind of frequently, and
outside of RIB.
Yes, for sure, outside of RIB, sorry, I meant around the city. It is something that HR is frequently called upon, and it just came up in CPT recently. to just make that call. So if you could help us, how do we make that call, Lynn?
Sure.
Thank you.
So for example, a manager can be a supervisor of personnel, but they can also be a manager of projects. A good example is a human resources manager where they don't oversee people, but we do coordinate policy across the city, make sure we're in compliance. So it could be project management as well.
Thanks, that's helpful.
I was just gonna add, in some cases, we have people who are coordinating day-to-day work, as we might call them, sort of a team lead. And then a more experienced, like the person who's actually the supervisor who is issuing discipline if needed, or approving time off.
Okay, all set, Councilor Lewis?
Oh, yes, thank you. It's helpful.
Yep, Councilor Chavez, I have a question.
Yeah, so I may have a couple email questions, but my specific question I had, and by the way, thanks to public companies and gratitude for your leadership of this department. We used to, a couple of years ago, have different line items for specific events. I appreciate that there's money still in here. I have one very specific question though, which is the annual MLK Day celebration that Patrick Brown next month. Do we anticipate that the funding for that program in particular, which used to be a line item in the budget, would continue through the $100,000 for the early ID program, or is there other initiative funds in the budget that would still be available for that particular event? I know it's just a few $1,000s, but I want to make sure that that's baked into the budget, because I know that that's something that Patrick has to store in the mind.
Yeah, I can say for our budget, we didn't break it down to that level. But it's certainly, I mean, we've supported it in the past, and I don't see why we wouldn't support it moving forward. I think it might be a combination of financial efforts through this administration's office and our office. I think that's how it was covered last year. But it's a critical event for the city, and so we would look to do that. I think on a wider lens, though, it's also just making sure that the way we're funding events, or we're seeking requests for funding is done in an equitable way, so that there's a process that's established. That's why we moved to the Empowerment Grant Program, because it was not an equitable process. Money was just kind of being handed out at the whim of the director, and that's not just. And so whatever programs we tend to fund or look to fund in the future, I think there just needs to be a process for how we're considering it and evaluating that and making that determination.
I will just contribute to that a little bit, this is what we're whispering over here. So prior to this upcoming year, and you will hear the presentation on the regional program budget at some point in the next couple Wednesdays, has been the practice, just building off of an equitable approach of how certain things have been funded by the city, where things go through put into that budget, and it was either a mayoral direction, sometimes a council direction, but there wasn't process and consistency or equity with how people could get, and entities and organizations could get funding that way. So we're trying to centralize and back to taking forward the spirit of what was developed in terms of strong criteria with the empowerment funds going forward, to have a clearer, more transparent process that is known and accessible to members of the community.
Okay, I mean, I certainly understand that. I also think that for many years, our MLK Day celebration is something that effectively has become a city event, albeit put on by a third party. And I think it'll be important to me, at least, that somewhere in the budget, whether it's here, whether it's in the regional program budget, that continues to be effectively a city event that we put on here at City Hall. So I know it's a relatively discrete item, but just wanted to put that here.
All right, and with that, thank you very much. And now. No, that's fine. It's been a fairly day. So moving on, where our final budget for this evening will be our Burlington Parks Recreation Waterfront Department. So here to be we'll go ahead and introduce yourselves, and then we will.
Sure. I'm Cindy White. I'm the director of Burlington Parks Recreation Waterfront.
My name is Derek Roach. Hi, everybody. I am the division director for Parks and Central Facilities, not to be used central. Did you say central administration?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we had.
A lot of central things,
Yeah.
that's right.
Thank you.
All right, welcome everybody. As everybody realizes, it's a little bit more of a somber presentation for BPRW this year, with the budget cuts. You know, it's oftentimes times of celebration and very effusive in my presentation. And obviously we're at a different place for this year. I put a department organizational chart up there because we had to put something up there. I put in there as far as the notes that much of the work that we need to do about our future alignment needs to be done with many voices at the table. So how we restructured still needs more work. Here's putting that up there just so that you guys can see the various, we've got we've got the different divisions, we've got 3 divisions basically at this point anticipating going forward. And then we've got multiple, we call them program areas for BPRW. What I'd like to do is just kind of note numbers. So prior to the reductions, we had 70 individuals that were the BPRW logo. And I say that because there's logo because there's some people that are in the library, for example, that are park staff, but they're under the library budget. Comprised of 65 full-time and 5 part-time staff. Following the RIF, we will have 59 full-time and 3 part-time staff. So just giving you a sense, because normally I think I have like 5 pages of org charts for you, so you get a sense of the depth of our department. So I don't want you to think, gosh, they only have 10 people.
Cindy, before you go,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say on that for a second, so Meryl brought it, that's the team, this is the team
Yes.
sport, well, in particular, because Parks was the department that was most impacted by layoffs, in this last week, and so noting that, I just really want to underscore that this is a work in progress, this is a draft work chart to give you all a conceptual plan of like where we're headed, and we're starting to engage, fully with the mayor's office and my team and the leadership team that remains at Parks to start to really dig in to what comes next, including meetings tomorrow and also on Friday with staff. And really talking this through, as Cindy mentioned, it's gonna take many voices to make sure that we're doing this diligently around reporting structures changing, but also the work cataloging I mentioned earlier in another presentation. So that work is being chartered forward, not say chartered, we're chartering forward here. And we know that there's gonna be a lot of transition as we move this department forward, and holding that with a lot of care. We held a similar meeting with CEDO BWD staff a week ago Friday. And so we learned from that particular point of engagement with employees, deep listening, and also clarity about like what is the vision, what is the direction we're headed, and the partnership will be a strong one between the mayor's office and the leadership team for Parks. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. Won't count against you.
So FY25 highlights, I think it's important to highlight some of the projects and initiatives that happened in FY25 with our, fantastic Parks and Waterfront team. The picture up in the top corner is our Champlain Street Park ribbon cutting. That is just a small neighborhood park. But it was a really neat project with a lot of different partners that were involved in that. It was one that was started pre-COVID. And then during COVID, we put it up on the shelf so we could focus on some other needs. But last September, we were able to do our ribbon cutting for that small little but very important part. I want to highlight the work that our waterfront team did with the beach closure program. It really improved the communications and almost I would say most importantly, really reduced the number of full beach closures that we had throughout the summer. And they were also able to add the North Shore natural area, that place where a lot of people swim. And they've asked over the years for us to be able to support that area, allowed us to add that space. And the waterfront team hasn't stopped with that. This year they'll have some new signage at the beaches that just makes it a little bit more clear when the beaches are open, when they're in kind of a warning stage. You can still go in, but you want to be really careful with small children to when they're fully closed. Who would have thought that people would want to go to a book fair? But they did. Our KJ Doyle, who is our events manager, it was just Yeah, oh, there you go. Yeah, Mary, oh, Mary, of course, and they were there, the team from the library was there. But it was just, KJ's really kind of come up with really kind of unique events for the department, and one of them was this grown-up book fair. We sold out of the tickets, we had 2 different time slots, and I think next year we've learned, and we'll probably do a little bit shorter time slots and do 3 of them. Phoenix Books sold a tremendous number of books. You should have seen them before the second session. They're like rolling in carts more of books because people bought so many. The library, people enjoyed having the Fletcher free there with lower cost books, so everyone could get a book. I'm sure the cocktails didn't hurt that were being sold on site there. But that event right there netted overall about $10,000 for the department. Emerald Ash Borer hit Burlington, so we've been talking about this for many years. It started with Warren Spinner, the previous city arborist. He knew it was coming and started planning for it, stopped planting ash. BJ Comine, who's our current city arborist, really just hit the ground running with trying to get as many trees in the ground as he could, knowing that it wasn't a matter of if, but when. And that has hit Burlington, and we're in the process of removing ash. But because of that proactive work, we were able to, in some areas where the streets were just planted completely with ash, there have been trees now for many years that have been growing. So it won't be just a complete bare look, which I think like that, is that Ellen's when they were taken down, whatever that was, where, it just was decimated without thinking ahead. A nod to our conservation team and their really creative response to graffiti. If you've been out on the our Greenway, the Burlington Greenway out by North Shore, there's this wall there that was just constantly being tagged. And they painted it stripes, like these sort of, I guess, they're bluish shades of blue, so it's easy to paint over if somebody does tag it. I do not believe we've had a tag since they did that. And it looks great out there, and the team did it. They didn't contract that out, they did it themselves, and it sounds like they had a fun time doing it. We received several awards last year. We were recognized by the Burlington Preservation Trust for the work at the cemetery office and our Redstone Cottage. Rob Peterson, who's our marina manager, was nominated for the Professional Year for Vermont Recreation Park Association. And Rob, we were fortunate to have join us. He came from Vermont State Parks, but started as a seasonal with us back many years ago. He has been doing a lot of great work with the marina under the direction of Aaron Moreau, our Waterfront Division Director, and they were able to get the elite fleet designation for the marina. We have kind of outlined in here cost savings for FY26 and where some of these fit in. We did do just painfully hard reduction of our 2 division directors and looking to division consolidations as part of our modern gov work and the aligning managers to staff. We did a reduction of 1 event staff member and a reduction of a part-time graphics person, both of those kind of preparing for future citywide consolidations. In the service inventory, and the idea of what are we not going to be doing anymore. Part of we will be ending the lease of the 2nd floor of the Old North End Community Center, and I just want to assure you that Champlain Housing Trust has already reached out to us for all the contacts to see the leases, find out how things have worked there, because they are ready to take over for the city when the city steps away from that. So be rest assured that that'll be happen. It's a wonderful space, and it'll be hard for us to leave that space. It's really special, and it provided a spot for the city to have right in our Old North End, which we don't have. So that will be a loss for the city not having that space available. They still will have the event hall on the bottom floor that people can rent out. We're also ending the operation of the core adult center. I note that there, but that is also a really big impact to our adult programs, because we had 2 people involved with that. One of them was purely just working with that on site with the adults in that space, but then one of them was doing adult programming, and really was just starting to hit the ground running. Had spent a lot of work time to get things organized as far as that adult program. It had sort of, we're not going to be fair to those who have been before, but let's just say there was opportunities for improvement there. with the Core Adult Center, and the programmer that is there was doing some fantastic work. We will be reducing the number of events offered, and those external rentals of the parks for events as part of that service inventory. As we did lose one event staff member, I will note that part of the events, could also go up as far as Modern Gov. We met in, I lost track when it was, fall or spring with or maybe winter. With Acrisure, our insurance provider, the attorney's office, all the departments that did events, and really came up with a much more streamlined application process for a contract for folks that are renting our parks, which hopefully will make it make it easier for staff, and hopefully it'll make it easier for those that want to rent our parks to produce enough. We made multiple cuts across the department to achieve the level funding. You can imagine the budget the size of ours to level fund it when you've got so many staff. Level funding is a challenge, and it's not just staff. Derek does the park side, his electricity goes up, his water bills go up, everything goes up. You know, what goes up in your house goes up with us at a magnitude level. And so in order to level fund, we had to make some changes there. We increased the penny for perks contribution because our planning team coordinates that end of the splinter taxes. We do decrease some repair and maintenance lines. We eliminated our ranger seasonal funds. So those are just some examples of what we did as far as multiple cuts that we needed to make. Revenues, we are anticipating approximately 102% of our budgeted revenue. Team did a fantastic job pulling in money from different areas. Just across, we produce a lot of revenue in our department, approximately 5 million. Based on FY24, so looking at May and June in the previous year for our projections, that is where we got the 102%, but we all know that there's this Canadian disruption coming. So we may not see that same budgeted revenue because May and June could be less. Most likely will be less. FY26, we had an overall decrease based on loss of revenue for reduced service areas. So for example, we had some leases at the core, second floor of the Old North End Community Center. So we don't have that revenue from the leases anymore. So you'll see that revenue going down. We have some growth in our marina. Our campground and parking, due to increased rates, the staff are on top of knowing that their costs increase, so their rates increase. But again, this could be limited to the loss of the Canadian traffic. Next up is our expenses. The staff is on track for staying within our budget. We have my number. I'm going to catch up to my notes here about how much we are in general fund. So we have about $11 million in expenses that in FY25, and we'll be just about over 5 million that come in the tax supported with our department. But we anticipate that we'll be able to stay within that line. We all have these attrition line, and folks know what that is. That's basically the assumption that you're not going to be, that you'll have the various vacancies. During COVID, we did. So we had, because a lot of positions were frozen, we weren't able to hire. And then when you have as many positions frozen as we have, it takes a while to fill them. So if one looked back around those years, you would see like, wow, they did have a lot of money they saved. But we haven't had that kind of savings in our positions in the recent years. And so one of the ways that we have to meet that attrition line is to look at our other budget lines and have some savings there. So approximately 159,000 is what we're needing to save across the full department and other budget lines to meet that attrition line. For FY26, we have a reduction of about $612,000. All right, here's our threats and opportunities. We know the obvious threats, the ramifications of significant cuts to our department, the loss of Canadian boaters, campers, and parking lot users. That's revenue that we count on. Opportunities, there's going to be a new director. New director will bring new ideas to the department. I see potential that consolidation of events and marketing is another opportunity. What could that build? Bringing everybody together that are like-minded, that might bring some new opportunities for the city. And then we have this transition work, and trying to get it right, being open to different, like things may be different than they were before. As the mayor noted, it's gonna be bumpy. The next, 5 to 6 weeks, there's gonna be bumps in the road. But the mayor's office is right there, ready to support the department. Again, we've got a leadership transition meeting starting tomorrow, so we can all make sure that we're all working together, that we're not working separately, and then connecting with the team. But it's gonna be hard work. I think somebody had in their slide about morale. It's gonna be a while to rebuild that. I mean, it's a hard hit to your department when you see as many pieces lost. You don't feel valued. You're not sure what it is that is wanted. So that's gonna take time to be able to rebuild that and rebuild that trust with the department to feeling that trust and feeling that they're valued is part of what is summary, just that we have an overall net reduction of our budget. We have that $337,000. We have reduction of eight staff members. The clerk treasurer's office is committed to filling the gap of our financial administrative assistant position that was reduced, but the task going over there, and I just kudos to your team's been awesome. They've really been helpful. We've been reaching out, and I'm like, I think somebody, Lisa Roach, says to me this morning, I couldn't figure out how to do something. She says, oh, you just post. So if anybody knows me, I like AI, get teased about that a little bit, but I'm like, okay, the person said this, and we use New World. What is that? What do I do? And it gave me a list, and they said, if you don't have permissions, you may not have any luck there. So I emailed Lisa back, here's what AI told me, and I still can't figure it out. And she's like, Cindy, I'll take care of that for you. And so, that was great, because just a number of things that CT's been really helpful. Jen Blow, who does some of our invoices already, has reached out to be able to support the team. So we appreciate your team being ready to do that. But the last note is that we took a significant hit with reductions. I just ask for patience with us. If you get people in the community reaching out to you, they're frustrated because they wanted to book ice time and they haven't heard back, or they wanted to do something, they haven't heard back. It's just know we're doing our best, and we need your guys' support with us. And when it comes to next year, don't look at us. So any questions and discussions, and hopefully some of you have been down to Waterfront Park. It's a beautiful time of year with the Sallia's down there.
Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome.
Let's open it up for questions from council.
So just Cindy, first of all, thank you very much. We'll be heading off to May here in 10 months, so let me we'll take this opportunity to say thank you as much as for your service to the city. I think you're really behind. Amazing department, amazing legacy for the work that you've done there, so it's deeply appreciated. I'm going to be following up with a number of questions in email, but there's a couple of questions that I'll mention right now. One is, in looking at the budgetary line item specifically for the O&E Center, I'm wondering, can you confirm for me when the lease at O&E ends, and are we done leasing all space there entirely at that point in time? And would we have any expenses at the O&E Center after that lease expires?
The lease will expire September 30th, and then we're done. There's no budget line for us to rent space. If that's what you're asking, are we looking to rent additional other space?
I mean, there are some budget line items, it looks like, under the O&E Center for rentals and so on. I guess what I'm just looking to confirm is that only until September, and it doesn't include any money? Okay, thanks.
Just to be clear for the public, this is a misconception is that the building is owned by Champlain Housing Trust. So when Cindy mentioned it earlier, the building is not owned by the city, it's owned by Champlain Housing Trust.
Right. If I wasn't clear about that, I was asking when our lease would end.
I was doing it mostly for people who are listening. I live in that neighborhood, and I for years thought that the city
was a city building. Yes, good point. Thank you. Second, and I don't know if you have the full picture of this yet, Cindy, but I know that there's reference to a potential reduction in the number of events, and some of those are obvious with respect to things that are put on, like related to court and so on, but I am curious with, to the extent the department has been hit with a number of service reductions here, how Burlingtonians and visitors will realize that in terms of the services that the department is able to offer. I don't know if you're able to expand upon that any further here in terms of what folks will realize. I'll say that I'm most concerned or have questions around the events that are immediately upcoming, summer programming, July 3rd, our camps, free meal program that we do for folks over the course of the summer. I'm wondering if you can provide any specifics now in terms of should folks anticipate there being any program loss as a result of the service reductions this summer in particular, and then more broadly, I think it would be helpful for us to have more specifics in that regard.
Sure. So as far as summer goes, I mean, our biggest hit that we're being hit will be adult programs. Those folks are through September 2nd. So as far as our summer, July 3rd will be pulled off. Rob Peterson, whose name I mentioned earlier, Rob agreed to step up to do the traffic for July 3rd. That was probably the number one piece that I was concerned about with that. And also Chief Burke with the police department has said they are ready there to support with that. It is big shoes to fill to coordinate that traffic end. Aaron Moreau, who is our waterfront superintendent, who oversaw the person that was doing events in the park, is just making sure, like, right away, Aaron's looked at the calendar, what are those events coming up, and number one's waterfront. So Aaron's in full communication with the waterfront with the marathon. So Aaron's in full communication with the marathon to make sure that just goes smoothly, like a smooth process through. So right now, we have Letty Beach Bites lined up. That's still happening. KJ had already lined all that up. But like, for example, we have Wag the Waterfront. It was a new event that she did 2 years in early September. It was like, KJ, you don't need to Wag the Waterfront. Like, don't worry about that one, because there'll be fall events that KJ will be needing to likely help coordinate the waterfront. So I don't think you'll see that immediate impact in there. What you might just see is it might just take longer time. Again, like the other ice arena is one we're working on to, figure that one out. It's many ways we are fortunate. It's a little bit quieter time there. It's all this for soft close time. But we've really got to do a lot of work to kind of figure that out. Catherine's, they gave us some money for reclassifications so that people, if they've taken on tasks that are that will, trying to think as far as like, we've got to get somebody as far as the Letty. So if someone's taking on higher level work, that we can put them through that reclassification process to be able to support their growth and that higher level. That answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I anticipate there may be some additional follow-up questions.
Yeah, please feel free.
And there's more to come. I mean, as I said, we're meeting as a team tomorrow and continuing to talk about not only focusing first on the internal work cataloging, but then how do we communicate with the community for clarification purposes, most importantly, on, as Cindy was outlining, well, here just some examples about what continues and why count and when, but also in terms of experience now is shutting down. Anyway, communication is really important first with the internal team, but then externally with our community, of course. And if you have things comes back to me, I will jump back in.
Okay, this isn't a question if I may just, I'll probably run over here, but I appreciate sort of the disclaimer with respect to the org chart here. I do think that it would be helpful to the extent possible, though, for us to get a clearer org chart in terms of what we're looking for towards the future, because one of the things that I recognize is that there are existing titles within the department that are not necessarily impacted by service reductions, but are also not necessarily reflected in terms of the title that's currently used in that org chart. And
Is it helpful if would it be helpful if I got you our current org charts, noting who's not in, like the ones that are went through the RIF? Because I don't want to preempt putting something to you when there's not been a chance for everyone to have comment on that's going to look like.
I just think whenever you're ready, and I know it may take time,
Great.
it would be helpful for us to have current org chart and future org chart to understand what the future organizations like.
That sounds great. Yeah, that definitely good. Yeah.
And I remember my second thing was around reclassification. So I just want to be very clear that as we proceed not only with the changes within this department, but any department that had a RIF involved. Part of the reason we're doing a work cataloging is to make sure that we're clear early about what winds down and what are core functions that do need to be picked up somewhere else in the city. And then we would use in a very disciplined manner, can't see Lynn, but in a disciplined manner, our reclassification process. And even outside of this layoff process, the city can do and should be doing better on reclassifications. It's something that I certainly noted in during our Board of Finance meetings, but to make sure that we are very clear throughout the ranks, and we've had conversations with department heads about what triggers a reclassification, how we do so in a very careful manner, how we don't ask employees to go beyond their scope of work unless it's absolutely necessary, and more importantly, that they be proper, meaning it only should be used if there's an expansion of responsibilities and requirements to that individual, and not for de facto raises for retention purposes. Part of our work as a city is to make sure we're being more consistent in that, regardless again of the department being impacted by a RIF.
Thank you.
So Councilor Grant, oh, sorry, Councilor Carpenter. I apologize, Councilor Carpenter, and then Councilor Grant.
All right. Sorry, unmute. Councilor Traverse said you were getting background noise, and I'll tell you that was all from Letty Park. I'm a little immobile right this minute, but I sit right next to Letty Park, which it's good noise, but I'm sorry for those of you who heard it. I guess right this minute will specifically just ask about the older adult programs. And I'm certainly aware of the discussion that since COVID, it has not been very robust. It needs work. I think we absolutely need a deep dive into the older adult programming in the city. There's been discussion that Heidelberg can take up some of the slack, and I think physically it can, but they're only staffed with 1.5 FTEs, and that's pretty minimal for a city for older adult programming. So I guess one ask I'm going to ask is that maybe we get a little inventory of what the city will be providing for older adult programming, continuing the support of Heidelberg versus maybe other programming. And a point of interest for the city councilors is there are more people over the age of 65 in the city of Burlington than there are people under the age of 18. And we perceive ourselves as a young city, and there's a lot of 30-year-olds. But when you look at our priorities for the division of services between older adults and younger adults, it may be a little inequitable. So you're going to hear on Monday, the council itself is going to get a very robust report back from our Council on Aging. And as part of that is going to be their concerns about how are we going to serve older adults. So we can certainly talk in more detail about that, but I just want to express that concern.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. Councilor Grant.
Thank you. Couple of things. The high school's BCL program uses the one community center. Will they be paying CHT to keep that, or will they be affected in terms of no longer being able to use the community center? Or is that something that still needs to be worked out?
I'm sure at some level CHT is working out, but CHT is committed to, folks that are using that space. So they may choose to, it's been now several years, they may choose to then take over running it themselves. They, operate a lot of places, but they've asked for all the contact information for who uses it. And they're just, today was asking if we could give them a map of who's in which room type space.
Okay. And so do we have a particular contact at CHT who would be reaching out to the people at the BCL program?
Lisa from CHT, I think I got that name right, is the one who's been in communication with us and asking for all that contact information.
Okay.
So my assumption, she's been our contact, that she would be the one that's.
Would it be appropriate to ask for her contact information?
Like, have it, because she's been emailing. Or you would like it?
Right, because I've gotten a couple of questions around the BC.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to send that to you.
Yeah, thank you, I really appreciate that. something to think about. So as we've discussed many times, not just in this meeting, we're all concerned about how our summer is going to be affected if we don't get the same amount of Canadian visitors. I always talk about digital advertising. I think that's something that the city needs to be doing in New England states and down in Boston and maybe even like the New York City area. I think we need to be doing targeted advertising in media for camping and just coming up with what our goals of the people that we want to attract and really put Burlington out there as a place to camp for the summer, to have a family vacation in the summer, to be able to combat some of that loss that we just probably have taken for granted the last few years. It's not something that we've had to really go after, but now we may want to be filling in those loss of visitors by really promoting ourselves within our own country. The two programs that I was concerned about that was mentioned by one of the individuals who was part of the RIF, the summer meals program. I don't need an answer now, but I would hope that that would be something that would be continued somehow. And then also the swimming program. That would break my heart if we're not continuing that, or at least having some other local agency. I don't know if that's the Y or if that is the Boys and Girls Club to pick that up, because the tragedy of the death of those two American children those years ago really, because they died within, I think, 2 weeks of each other. Yeah, that was so that really brought to light that we have all these children who want to play with their friends but weren't safe in the water because they didn't know how to swim. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Thank you. And we did receive Great Lakes Fisheries Commission was money that we were really concerned about receiving, but we did receive that money already for FY26. That was $100,000. And part of that is swim lessons, part of that is that summer meals program. So we do have that support for this concept.
Thank you. And Councilor Knight, you'll be our last one. We are out of time, Councilor Rose. Go to Councilor Knight.
Echoing thanks for all of your service. I love Maine. Speak for you, but we're sad to see you go. And I'm just a little confused. So on slide 4 in service inventory, the third bullet, it says reduce the number of events offered and external rentals of parks for events, which sounds like a loss of revenue, which then you say we're losing 275,000 and change of revenue from reduction. And that just, I just want to make sure I'm reading that right, first of all. And it sounds like kind of a lot of money to lose in comparison to, some like the RIF cuts and the total cuts. And so I just wonder if you can walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah. So the expectation was for us to still continue to have programs and rent out our parks and messaging of what we can do less. And so, but with less is less revenue. But if you, unfortunately, the cost of a position, including benefits, and if you lose that benefit, you're still left with a net gain. I guess I hate to use the word gain when it comes to individuals. There still is money on the table. But yes, you're right. I mean, a lot of these ones that we had reductions on, that there is less revenue, which is why we noted in the slide that there is less revenue. So while we might have $600,000 in less expenses, that's not a net of 600,000. It was a net of, it was 3 and change. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I know there's a lot of questions about this department in particular, so I don't mean to cut people off. We've been at it for 3 hours, so we're going to pause the conversation. You know, to send more questions to Cindy and or the mayor's office on this. And we'll be having more conversations as to come, as we mentioned, around the leadership planning meeting tomorrow, engagement with committee employees Friday, and more to come back to council. With that, with no other items on the agenda, I will adjourn tonight's meeting at 8:27. Thank you very much.